And we are live. Hi, everybody at the Elephant and Castle community. No, we're not yet. Hold on.
You did say for me it's live.
It says live meeting is now. Oh, it is. Mine says it's preparing, and now this flipped to. So
All
that
right.
we are live. Yeah. I don't mind looking a little bit silly for the first few seconds. Hi, everybody at the Elephant and Castle community. I am Nick from Retribe. My computer is just a little bit slow, but yes, it is saying live now. Joining me today is Jack Jacobs. Jack is a coach and a mentor specifically for younger people. I'm really excited to have him on today. Jack, thanks for joining me. Can you introduce yourself to the community?
Yep, of course, Nick. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, like Nick said, I'm a transformational coach for young people, specifically 11 to 25-year-olds. I work with young people privately, and I also work with schools, universities, and organizations who work with young people. Or employ young people as well. So yeah, how I got into this line of work, I've been doing this for the last 5 years, specifically the one-to-one stuff and talks and workshops a bit longer for the past 9 years. And yeah, I went through some struggles in my teenage years, and I experienced the mental health system in the UK and realized and learned a lot from that experience, and decided to kind of campaign and talk more about eating disorders specifically, but then more just in general about mental health, and trying to bring this more into the focus of not only young people's minds but everyone's minds. And yeah, had a stint in the corporate world whilst also continuing to campaign, and I'd done some stuff also in the corporate world with the company I was working for. And then yeah, eventually left in 2017 to pursue this full time, because yeah, this is what fuels me, this is what drives me, and this is what makes me feel connected to my purpose and my meaning, and to the world and to other people. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
It's beautiful. I can't wait to learn a little bit more. We'll flesh it out. But if you don't mind, Jack, I know like we've just got to know each other, but you mentioned that you had some struggles when you were younger. Can you without as comfortable as you feel, can you let us know what were the challenges you had when you were a young man?
Yeah, for sure. So quite common ones in terms of just kind of higher level challenges, and then they these things kind of filter into each individual's lives in different ways and how we experience them. But yeah, my parents split up when I was 11, and up until that point I was being bullied quite a lot. I was a chunky lad as a kid, and yeah, I got bullied all throughout primary school, secondary school. But when my parents split up, that was definitely a massive inflection point in my life. And I think I just started to question things more. Everything that existed, I then questioned its existence and the meaning of it to me. And that then led me to kind of, over the next 2 years of exploring myself and trying to understand what was going on, I decided to start losing weight. And I think the main goal, the main language that I was using at that age was I wanted to feel comfortable, not only in my own skin, but in the world around me. I wanted to fit in. And so I went on this journey to lose weight, and I did this for years, for a couple of years, 4 or 5 years. But actually, it was 3 years in total of the extent to which I really went extreme with the weight loss. But in the first 3 months, I was the most extreme, and just decided to cut basically anything I considered healthy or unhealthy out of my diet. And yeah, so I went very extreme with my relationship, and this is how I describe it. As I came out of it, it was a breakdown of my relationship with myself, and the connection with myself, and the relationship with food, exercise, my body, these fundamental things in life that we have to have a relationship with. And yeah, I destroyed that relationship, and eventually ended up in CAMHS, in the Children's Mental Health Unit in the UK. And from there, I spent 6 months in and out of CAMHS, getting my weight checked, my heart checked, and everything checked in terms of my body. And then yeah, I was going to begin therapy, but decided to discharge myself to embark on my own journey to rebuilding myself and reconnecting with myself, which is how I like to kind of describe it.
It's interesting to talk to a young man about. I mean, how old are you now?
I'm 26 now. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you were younger and you were having this relationship with food, I mean, it was classified as an eating disorder, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So can you kind of go more into that? Because I know that personally, the people who I know in my community that are very open and vocal about their eating disorders and their journey with their relationship with food, primarily have been women, and I do have some male friends who have identified with having eating disorders. But I'm just wondering, at what age were you? I know that you called yourself a chunky lad. um, I think in our first call you said that you had a nickname too, right?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
had a nickname. It was the Cube.
the
And
cube?
I
Yeah.
put it on my rugby ball, and I used to get called the Cube, for many reasons. Not only that I ran through people, but yeah.
So when you were in CAMHS and were you diagnosed with an ED then?
Yes, I was diagnosed with anorexia. That was the official
Right.
diagnosis. Yeah, that was
But
at
what was
16.
so what's kind of pre-cube cam look like at that age, before you started to kind of grow into your body in terms of, your struggles with food and your relationship with food and perhaps overeating. But can you get more into that at that younger
Mm,
age, what that started to feel like, what food did for you?
that's really interesting. It's really interesting. Just I want to say on one part, because when I've spoken about this, no one's ever really asked me about the relationship I used to have before, and that's quite interesting because I haven't really thought about that for a long time. In fact, it was actually really, really good. I loved food, and in fact, all the ironic thing about this journey is that all the way through of me, of me, cutting and losing weight and effectively starving myself was that I wanted to be a chef, and I actually loved food and I loved cooking, and not only because I wanted to cook for other people, but I loved food. I grew up around home cooked meals, and cooking and food, being around the house and just learning about food and different tastes and cuisines. And so, yeah, I was very relaxed and open. And to be fair, I think my chunkiness, as I call it, was more, I was going to grow into it, to be honest. If I had just let myself be and not beating myself up so much, then yeah, I would have grown into it. And I would have just developed in a more natural way. Because looking back, didn't really I didn't really overeat. I mean, we all eat the wrong things. Don't get me wrong. I definitely had my treats and my moments, like we all do. But for the amount of sports I was doing, and for the amount of the work, I was playing any sport under the sun, 7 days a week, training during the week, and then matches on the weekends. That was the routine all the way up to 11, to be honest. And that's when things started to change, just naturally because you also joined secondary school.
Mm.
So you kind of put down some things, and then by the time you reach A levels, it's a lot of things that deteriorated that you used to do, like music and sport and some of the hobbies or interests that you used to have. But yeah, I think to sum it up, my relationship with food and the relationship with food and exercise was amazing. It was just amazing. It was kind of perfect, in fact. But the relationship with my body was a different matter, and that used to really, really get to me. And I think even regardless of bullying or not, just natural societal pressures to look a certain way, I still would have felt pressured, and just pressure. And also, in your own body, regardless of what the benchmarks are in society, it's just about feeling comfortable in yourself, right? And it's about trying to find that. And well, yeah, I've learned the hard way. You don't only find that from manipulating your body, but there is part, that it's not to say that being able to look at yourself and appreciate your own body and feel proud of it, and I didn't feel that ever
Mm.
until now, until now. So yeah, I think interestingly, two of the relationships were really good, but the relationship with my body was not definitely not good.
So how do you define a relationship with your body when you're, pre-teen?
Mm.
So you're like 11, 12 years old and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're going, I don't look well. What you describe what you saw. Describe what you saw in the mirror. If you
But
can remember back there, yeah.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
I you know,
So long
I
ago.
do remember. I remember very distinctly, quite vividly. You know, putting jackets on and clothes on in front of the mirror and just feeling really fat and uncomfortable. You know, to be honest, to be frank, that's how I felt. But I guess what I'm saying is I've learned that that's not. If you feel fat, it's not only because of what you see in the mirror. There is a bigger picture there,
Mm.
and it's all about context as well, right? Because in the context of my situation, there was no more sports or movement I could have been doing. And then on the diet side, yeah, I guess so, maybe potentially, but I don't think it would have moved the needle much. I think that was just me. So really, what we're saying here, I guess what I'm saying is, it comes down to acceptance of yourself, and that has played a big part in rebuilding my relationship with these fundamental things. Is accepting who you know, accepting yourself on a daily basis. I used to, when I was rebuilding myself, I had this mantra every single day. I would wake up with nil nil. You know, it's a blank canvas. Whatever I did yesterday, because it was difficult. It was really difficult. Sometimes I'd skip meals and then I'd beat myself up because I was in that point I was in rebuild mode and I wanted to rebuild. But yeah, I prevented myself from beating myself up because I knew that every day I just had the opportunity to either accept myself for who I am today, or spend the whole day beating myself up and then not take any steps. And I learned also that small steps are what make the big steps. And it, for me, it all started with eating the chocolate bar. That was as simple as it was. And it's just about building that momentum and confidence to rebuild and move forward.
I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and to the point now where I'm completely abstinent almost 6 years, and I feel really, I feel great. I don't drink, and you said something about you loved food, and I think back to when I first started to drink, and the relationship that I had with alcohol changed. I never actually really enjoyed it until I noticed that it solved problems for me. I noted that if I was scared or frightened or of something, or feeling very insecure, or something painful happened in my life, alcohol, it solved the problems. It took the pain away. Now, was there a point in your life when you said that you loved food? Was it from the enjoyment of food, or was it actually solving some problems in your life, some trauma, maybe of your parents splitting up and just not feeling like you fit in, or feeling a lot of fear? Like, did it solve problems? Is that why you loved it?
It was the opposite. No, I didn't love it because it solved problems. I loved it because I loved it. But right. I used, because I loved it and because it was a big part of my life, I also knew, I knew a lot about food and how it impacted the body. I mean, yeah, because I was studying food tech, and I remember listening to, university level podcasts on nutrition and health and all these things. And so I knew exactly what I was doing when I was cutting and starving myself. I knew exactly what I was doing. So in fact, it was because I loved it so much, and because it was such a big part of my life, that when I couldn't deal with my emotions and I couldn't process them, and I couldn't take myself, because when your parents divorce or anything like that, when your parents split or anything, if something changes, you lose something, but there's something new on the other side. But it's a grief process, and you've got to go through the grief. And I I stopped myself I stopped myself and controlled all of it. And I had control of, well, if you look at all my loves all throughout my life up until the age of 11, the biggest ones were food and exercise, and the lowest one was my body. And when that all happened, I decided to take well, it was actually 2 years. So I was in the same house as my parents, and it wasn't toxic or anything. It was quite calm, and it was fine. But the 2 years of waiting to move house was difficult, because it was like, well, I can't move on until the line has been fully drawn. And yeah, when I did move house, the day I moved in there, that's when everything changed. That's when in my head I was like, this is it. I'm done. Like I threw my Xbox out. I threw everything. Like my whole life just changed overnight. I was just like, I'm running every single day, swimming every single day, and I'm doing it to lose weight with the purpose of losing weight, and I'm gonna get my body into shape. And yeah, everything got really serious for me. And the same with studying. You know, that all came as well. It was all one. It's like I just realized that I have to take control of my life, and it was good, right? That's a good thing. But when you don't have hindsight and you don't have enough, you can't build when you're younger. And this is where this is why I think, you know, having a space like I provide is really powerful, because you get to build some of the blocks that you can't see, and just exploring. You know, if someone would have asked me just a very simple question like, well, what's your intent? What's your true, you know, what's your real intention? Well, to lose weight. Well, I know now that there's always something deeper. It's never really what the surface level want is that there's always something usually deeper to explore. And then they would have got, well, you actually want to feel comfortable. So, well, exercise, yeah, of course, that's great. That's going to make you feel more comfortable for sure. But what else? And just building that bigger picture that when you get tunnel vision, that's when problems occur. And yeah, I stayed tunnel vision for 3 years and then ended up in hospital, you know, at my own expense. And I was at death's door. It was scary. And that's what turned me around was, you know, asking the nurse if you're going to die. And she literally looks at you blank and says that we need to go and speak to your family. And it's just, I was expecting a no, you know. And that was what completely, when I realized I'd brought myself to that extent, to that level, yeah, that was, I knew I had to do something now.
And you say that was a 2 or 3 year journey from you deciding, waking up that one morning to, I'm deciding to take control over my body and my relationship with food, and I'm going to get in shape, to you then ending up in hospital. How long did that take to the point where you?
So it was
for your life.
It was September, October 2009 to February 2012. Yeah. So it's like 2.5, 3 years. Yeah.
What were that 2.5, 3 years like? I know you talked about societal pressures. So this is kind of like pre-Instagram influencer type stuff, right? Or
yeah, just about. Yeah. It was more Facebook. Yeah, it was more Facebook, to be honest. That was it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pre Love Island stuff, right? Because these are just unhealthy images of bodies in particular, because they just don't represent us. But yeah, so what were the societal pressures that you saw when you go from I'm waking up and I'm changing? What were the pressures that you took from the exterior to go, I'm going to change? Or was it more of an interior push?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
No,
it was more interior. It was just more interior. I don't think I felt. I can't say I didn't feel them, because I just don't think you can not feel them. I think we all feel them to some extent, because our brains are clever and they pick everything up. So it's hard to kind of ignore, you know, everything that's going on completely. But I think at that point I was just so focused on all the motivation was intrinsic. There was nothing, you know, I wasn't looking at anything that was motivating me. All that was motivating me was to prove people wrong. That was all. I wanted to prove people wrong, and including teachers. You know,
were they telling you you're chunky, and was that what you were proving wrong? Is that
like anyone who called me fat just wouldn't be able to call me fat anymore. But the hilarious thing is that they continued to call me fat even though I wasn't fat. And that's, that was, and again, that creates massive dysmorphia, especially when your expectation isn't met, and you can't deal with it. Again, I couldn't. It's just like you're on a treadmill and you're just running, and then see, the thing is, towards the end, I would say summer 2009. This is summer 2011. So just kind of 6-7 months away from. That's when I didn't want to get better. I didn't want anything good anymore. Like, I wanted to be ill, and I wanted to feel ill, and I wanted to feel the way that I was making myself, and I was now motivated by the feeling of emptiness in my stomach, in my body. You know, that was what was driving me. I didn't actually want to rebuild. And that was a very difficult, but not for me. I mean, I was so driven. For me at that age, at that time, I remember I was just constantly cutting. I would throw. When I started year 10, no, year 9, year 11. Sorry, when I started year 11, that's when, you know, I didn't eat any lunch. I didn't eat anything all day, and then I would come home and have, I mean, like lettuce and some. And I was going, you know, my day was just wake up, go to school. I was drinking coffee, fizzy drinks all day to, you know, like the diet ones to fill my stomach up. Again, I knew the bubbles would, I knew the warmth would, and it did to a certain extent. And then I'd be in bed by 6 because I didn't have enough energy. And then it got to the point where I couldn't even walk to school. And I'll just walk straight to the medical room and just ask them to pick me up again. And then I just didn't go. And I kept missing it, until February comes. But all this, then that was when I went to the GP, because I broke down. I just broke. That was in the November, December time, of 2011, because I just didn't.
Was it like, obviously physically, but was it where did you break? Where did you feel the break?
See, this is the thing. I think there is obviously a natural mechanism within us, because I don't believe that we want to ever, you know, we don't ever really want to self-implode. But what we do want is to stop feeling what we're feeling. And self-imploding is something, is a way of transferring what you feel pain-wise or anger-wise, or, you know, what you're feeling inside of you to something else. And I guess, then it shows, right? There was a part of me that didn't want to be where I was, because, but it was physically as well. You know, I think I was just physically exhausted. I was on the brink of, well, death. I mean, I was having panic attacks every day. My heart was palpitating. I was having heart pains. I was really worried. You know, I was getting concerned. I thought I was going to drop any minute, to be honest. So, and then obviously my GP was, you know, this is why I started campaigning and doing all the work I do, because, you know, it's hard to get help even when you're at absolute despair. It's this is why, you know, I don't start off with saying I got diagnosed with anorexia, because, well, if you look at the definition of it, it's only by weight. And that's what, for me, it is about weight. Of course, that's the byproduct, but it's actually about a relationship with yourself, and a relationship with food, and a relationship with your body, and a relationship with exercise, or whatever mechanisms and controls you're using to distract yourself from the real thing. And that's the thing. Once I actually recovered, I didn't recover. I just like brushed aside, and then actually saw what was actually in front of me all along, because I didn't deal with it.
What was in front of you that you saw?
The family stuff, you know, the despair around losing my family, losing the connection, losing that feeling, right, of unity. And I was angry, really angry, and that's what came out. And it had to at some point. And that's why I realized, you know, either you just control it all your life and let it control you, or you just grab control of that and do something about it. And, you know, I use the same mechanisms, and this is the hilarious thing that I find, that I use the same mechanisms and things that got me into the mess to get me out of the mess. So I used exercise, I used food, and I used my body to rebuild myself as well. So as much as those were distractions, they also served me in so many ways. And I think this is all of us, isn't it? It's like, we are all unique. We are all neurodiverse in some way, shape, or form. You know, our brain's like a fingerprint. No two brains are ever going to be the same. And it's just all about, regardless of what you want to call this or what's going on, it's all about just connecting with yourself and understanding it so that you can live your life in a way that makes you feel more fulfilled and happy. And yeah, understanding my traits and stuff, for example, the extremism, right, going from 0 to 100, that can serve me but also destruct me. And it's about finding those themes of yourself and then using them to your power.
No, I love what you say about having a relationship with yourself, because I think that if you were to look, most people were to look in the mirror, they would say, yeah, I've got a relationship with myself. But when you really dig deep, I think we think we do, but it's taken a long time for me to build a relationship with me, like almost 6 years of a lot of work and a lot of just doing things for other, just doing stuff and taking actions in my recovery and my purpose and my passions to actually build ideas around what self-care means, what self-love means. Because you would have said the idea of self-care or self-love to me even 5 years ago, and I would have said, nah, it's just hippie talk. Go hug a tree. Go hug a tree and eat some granola and yogurt kind of thing. But really, what I've learned and by having good people around me is like you can't have a relationship with other people until you know yourself deep down inside. And that's why I like what you say about having a relationship with yourself. And I think that what I'm really interested in is, you said when you finally admitted defeat, I suppose, and you opened up and you saw that anger of the breakdown of the family unit. How did you, because I know you said you used food and exercise as a way to get out of it, but did you need to treat the anger? Like, how was that? Was that through therapy? Was that through you doing some deep dive work yourself? And kind of coming to realizations around that, because that's what I found. It's found like I needed to treat the trauma, not the alcohol was a solution. I needed to get down to the fear of growing up in a scary household, and knowing that fear was a part of my life and my existence. I needed to treat that trauma,
100%.
So
yeah,
what
100%.
was it? What tools did you have to deal with that anger of the breakdown of the family unit?
Well, movement is the biggest one of mine. Because I use it. I don't only use it just to move and for it to make me feel good, but I use it for self-reflection a lot. There's the lot. I love running long distance, and I love doing long boxing sessions, and usually long cardio sessions. But recently started trying to do some more weights and stuff. I get bored too easily. That's the issue. I like to see, again, that's the side of me. So that, but it's, I think, like you said, anorexia was a smokescreen. The food, the control, they were a smokescreen, and the truth was behind it, and that's the trauma, right? And like you said, I had to understand that, and I had to think. I had to give myself time and space to think. And I think we tend to overcomplicate some things, but I think simply, I needed time and space to think about, well, what am I angry about, and who am I angry? Who am I angry at, and how do I resolve this? And ask myself, coach myself, essentially, ask myself these types of questions. And through the years, I would say probably for the last 2 years now, I can say that I've dealt with a lot of it. A lot, there's always more, we're not perfect. No one's perfect. And I'm definitely not perfect. But I'm always learning. It never stops. You're always connecting with yourself and reconnecting with yourself, and then redrawing lines, and then drawing another line, and then restarting, and it's just a continuous process. And I think, I'm just happy that I realized that was actually just the smokescreen and the control, and now the real work begins. Even though I spent the next 6 years like relentlessly trying to rewire and reprogram my brain to not see food and calories, and I mean, it was just a minefield, for me. I couldn't do anything. I was just debilitated. I was running away from icing sugar because I thought it would make me gain weight. I mean, that I couldn't bake anymore. I really was catastrophizing and convincing myself that these things were real. and they were happening to me. But yeah, I think time, space, and movement. If I can
Beautiful.
sum it up in 3 words, that is what enabled me to heal and not only to heal, but to learn about myself.
Mm.
And yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact, none of this is linear. It's all kind of, none of it is like from here to here. It's just, it's always a movement, a constant kind of going back, and I like to say it's like I go through transformations. It's like cycles. I'll
Yeah.
go through cycles of like feeling very uncomfortable. But I'm like you. I do the work. I always show up and I do the work because I know it's a continual process. But it's like this thing of like feeling very uncomfortable, then going into this kind of like cocoon or metamorphosis kind of stage of like, oh, something, and then feeling even more uncomfortable as like like there's a transformation, something's happening, and then you kind of come out and you're like, wow, I'm not the Nick that I was 6 months ago. Something's happened. And then it kind of goes into this a kind of a calm stage, and then all of a sudden something will get uncomfortable again, and then it'll feel like something's growing, and then I'll feel like I've got to fight for something, and then I'll feel as I come out of like this cocoon, and it's this constant change where people say, where am I going to get to? When do I get that peace? And I'm like, you get it, and it goes and it comes back, and it's always moving. I don't think I love people that say it's always the journey and not the destination.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the greatest metaphor for life, is that we're constantly on this journey of showing up and of doing the work of always self-discovery, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and then being into a place of creating space for other people to go through those same journeys. And I'm really interested to know how you got into the space of becoming a coach, and how you feel now that helping others actually helps you. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I know it is with me. But how did you develop your coaching practice, and the primary target of working with youth, and being able to kind of, I guess, help people not get to where you went to, right?
Yeah. There is I kind of well, I'm continuing, like anything, I'm continuing to learn and add to my practice, and I want to add more therapeutic tools and techniques and that side of things. So yeah, I'm looking to train with the Human Givens Institute, so that's where I'm going to add that side of things. But yeah, how I kind of see, if I was to really simplify things, there's kind of a line here, and a line here, and the one in the middle is kind of balance, and that's where we're always trying to get to, but we never really reach it. And again, it's like time. It's always, once you do reach it, it's gone anyway, because it's just kind of always moving. But yeah, in terms of helping young people, if they are distressed, then it's hard to think of solutions, hard to focus on this type of stuff. So over here, so what you have to do is you have to bring them back up to balance, and then that's where the coaching comes in and stuff. So yeah, so I kind of see it, my work as helping people come up to here and then get them over here, or if they're over here, then help them get even further. And that's kind of how I see the work that I do. But how I got into it, and it's kind of like your description when I came out of the cocoon, and I was like, oh wow, like what did I do? Like, because when I fully, it's interesting because I ended where I started, because I actually went back in 2017. I went back to counting calories, like relentlessly, but with the goal of gaining weight and training more. And I was training for a marathon. And it was that was the last stage for me, was because it just proved to me that I didn't actually care anymore about any of these things. And my brain had actually been reprogrammed enough to not just fake it till you make it, but I actually didn't feel like I didn't feel it. And I was like, wow, I've really changed. And that was the line that I drew and said that this journey, this chapter's over, and this journey's over. But a new one begins, right? And I guess I realized that from discharging myself from CAMHS, when I did that, I didn't know I didn't know how I was going to do it. But it was through anger again. It was someone that, the therapist told me I was being argumentative and I wouldn't recover. And and looking back, actually, it's quite interesting because if they had a more of a coaching mindset, then I wasn't actually being argumentative. All I was doing was saying, I think a restaurant is a bit too much for me right now. Can I start with something smaller? Something more, just something more bite-sized that I can digest right now. Because that was just too scary for me. Way too scary. That would just induce way too much anxiety. That would get me into a complete panic. So there's no point. You're not helping me at that point. Anyway, yeah, they called me argumentative and said that I wouldn't recover if I didn't listen to them. So I just got up and walked out and just went. That's when I went straight to WH Smith and bought a chocolate bar. And I remember getting in the car with my mum. Was like, "Mum, 1-0, let's go." And it was all for me. It was like a game. It was like, I'm gonna prove. If you think I can't recover, then I'm just gonna prove you wrong. So that's where the initial energy came from. But quickly I realized it's like, well, I have no meal plan now. I have not, and for the first time, I was like, whoa. When am I hungry? Like, how do I know? Like, I didn't even know anymore. I confused my body so much. These basic things of like structuring your food in the day, I didn't know what to do. And the next day I was starting sixth form college. And yeah, everything just ran from there. But yeah, I guess what I realized was that from not going to therapy and not having access to help and support other than my mum, which I have to say is that she is where she provided the space for me to think. And also I did a lot of thinking by myself and a lot of thinking and reflecting. But I realized I was using coaching techniques all along. I was looking into the past to learn, but ultimately always asking myself, well, this is great, but how do I practically use this and move forward? And I was constantly pushing myself into the forward. And when I was at CAMHS as well, the first things they did were no exercise, let's cancel your GCSEs, let's you're not going, no school, It's like, well, you just took away all of my purpose, like everything. Now I don't even, not even more, I don't even want to be here. So what I realized was my recovery was about reconnecting with my purpose, not taking away things, was adding things to my life and giving myself excitement and something to achieve, something to aim for. That's where the corporate world came in. I was driven from 15 to get into the company that I then eventually worked at 18. And I used to go around saying this. And it was just very simple in my head. I was like, you don't eat, you don't do exams, you don't get into this. Simple. I was like, it's your fault. It's all your fault if you don't get into this place. And I guess, yeah, it's a very extreme ownership and very extreme accountability for my actions and not letting anything get in my way, just like, I'm gonna go and do this. And I guess, yeah, when I eventually came out, I realized that, yeah, I need to be in the coaching space, because yeah, what I did for myself was clearly quite powerful. And then I trained as a coach, and then I realized even more, like when I'm training, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's what it's called. I'm like, I've been doing that for years. Like I didn't know it was called that. And yeah, it just really attached the words and the theory behind some of the things that I was actually using for myself, and doing for myself. And yeah, since then, just been trying to go deeper and deeper.
What was it like? I'm wondering, like, it sounds like you're pretty hard on yourself, not harsh, but hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Would you do now, knowing like a little bit, you've had a bit more experience, would that language change, come on, Jack, you got to do this and you got to be doing this and you got to be doing that? Would it change? Would it soften?
For me, no.
Right.
No, not for me. No, not in terms of how I treat myself. Again, everyone works in different ways. And yeah, I prefer a slap in the face. So get me going. I just do. That's the truth. But some people don't.
But
some
you know
people
what?
need nurturing, and it's different.
I need a rocket. Like sometimes, because I can go into the kind of like, I'm okay, I'm good. Like right now, my relationship with food, I would say, is not healthy because I've got a big hip surgery coming up. I've got to have a hip replacement, and I've been really it's been constant chronic pain, and I've been using that as an excuse not to go to the gym. And then it seems really counterintuitive to say I can eat what I want. And I think because I've been hurting myself by not going to the gym, I've been punishing myself by having, I live right next door to a Ben and Jerry's in Soho.
Oh no, that's bad. That is awful.
Dude, and I go get the little baby blue tub. It's like 170 calories, right? You think, oh, it's just, but I ate a whole tub of Ben and Jerry's last night, and this is like, and this is me punishing myself. This is me because I know I'm not getting up. I know I'm not um I'm not showing up for myself as I should be with regards
Mm,
to the relationship with my body and my health, and I can find excuses. So I too, like you, I need a little bit of a rocket every once in a while, but I gotta see why. What are the other things that are going on in my life where I'm lacking that motivation to do
yeah,
something that I know is actually going to be helpful to me.
yeah,
um so I think it's a constant kind of evolution, change, again, transforming about what kind of language I want to use for myself. I don't want to be too harsh, but I also want to be assertive, and I'm trying to find that balance right now, which at 51 years old, man, I'm nowhere near found it. I think this is why I'm interested to know about like what's the language sound like. Jack, you got to do this, you got to do this, or Jack, come on, buddy, we can do this. And I think sometimes I can be hard on myself and use hurtful language rather than
yeah,
encouraging language.
yeah, yeah. No, it's not. No, it's not. It does depend. I guess it's about connecting with yourself as well. Because I know I can. Well, not always in the moment. But I, definitely when I reflect and stuff, I know, like what you're describing. When you're fooling yourself and when you actually can't do something physically or mentally. You just can't, because there are some days or some moments. You just
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. Just really, really physically, mentally not in a position to have do to expend the energy to do something. But
Mm-hmm.
um no, I think my language is more, it's definitely hot on the hard side, but it's not like I'm not like I wouldn't, I'm not saying, oh, you fat shit, let's go for a run. It's not, there's nothing negative. Well,
Mm.
it's so abstract, right? It's like really subjective what negative is to everyone, but for
I
me
think
it's not.
I think the word harmful. I think there's nothing harmful
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
that using derogatory terms or harsh terms to yourself can be harmful because it's lowering your self esteem in some way. But
Yes, yeah, yeah.
and this is the thing, this is the whole idea around tough through tender, is that this is as you were talking about earlier, and as we mentioned, it's about balance. And I think this is the thing of defining of what kind of balance do we want to have be between resilient language, which is, that kind of, come on, you can do this, inner strength. There is a strength there, a power, to also being, tender, which is compassionate and can be
Mm,
vulnerable, but it's also very self-aware. So I'm constantly in this flux, and as we develop tough through tender, is this idea around creating balance of language that we use to ourselves, but also towards other people, which ultimately is enabling us to process emotions and feelings and thoughts, and knowing that none of it's all, it's true and it's not true.
mm.
And I think that sometimes I can use that language and go, is it really true, Nick? Are you really being sympathetic to yourself, or are you just actually scared? Are you scared about having your hip replaced? Are you scared of what it's going to be like after? Are you scared that you're not going to be able to skate again? And I think a lot of it is driven by fear. But that's always something that's here to teach me something too. So again, this is all kind of talk. I know you're a coach, and so am I. So we're kind of using this language in a way that we understand it. But for a lot of people who are listening who might not understand it, I think it's being able to create space for you to learn languages, that you can use for yourself and use on with other people. And I suppose because we are running out of time now, I want to try to get to your programs and what you have available and who they are available for, and then also kind of your ideas, not kind of, but your ideas for what you want to be, Jack, in the future, and what your aims are.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, well, look, I work with 11 to 25-year-olds. So um, parents, teachers, schools, universities, organizations, anyone who falls into those age brackets, or you work with them, or you're a parent of them or guardian of them, then yeah, then get into contact with me. And my website is jack.coach, so really easy. So yeah, if you want to check out more and get in contact, then yeah, that's where you can find me and more about me. And yeah, in terms of what I see for the future, like I said, I want to add more the therapeutic side, so I can bring more young people who are distressed and experiencing, really severe pain and anger and obsessions, addictive behaviors, those type of things, to a point where they feel, in somewhat, what I'm describing is, I guess, the state that I was in when I was an absolute, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to improve. I don't see any way out of anything. How do I help a young person in that position? And that's what the future looks like for me, is answering that question, and then answering the second question as well. How do I get young people to access that support without them having to wait 2 years? And that's when it becomes bigger than me. And I don't just see myself working in private practice my whole life. I want to. This is the first step, on the journey. I have a very long vision, and for me, I want to build something or join with something. I don't know what it's going to look like, but for me, we have to solve the problem soon, now, yesterday, last year, but, with young people not being able to access support, and further to that, them not needing to access the level of support that they need to access. We shouldn't even be letting them get to that point. And for me, I really want to solve that. So yeah, if anyone's interested in working with me to solve that, then let's talk, because I'm really passionate about that, and it just needs to be done. It's not going to end well for our future leaders.
I don't want to leave it on a low note, because I there's faith. There are guys like you out there, guys and gals out, and like you say, get to the point where these children don't need these things, and that is supporting families and supporting parents and supporting teachers, so that they can have, so that they can kind of nip all these little things in the buds. Because I know that I displayed certain traits when I was very young, that if somebody with a keen eye would have said, hey, you know what, little Nick, he might need some help, because he's doing some things that I've noticed that, I've heard from other people that they did those things when they were younger, and there might be some trauma there that needs to be sorted out. So obviously getting to the trauma, but obviously hopefully getting to a place where young children aren't experiencing trauma, and might not happen in our lifetime, brother, but you've got an ally in us and Retribe, and I'm hoping we could maybe meet up for coffee soon, and we can come up with some plans. You're a great young man, and I'll support you every way we can to try to get your message out there and what you're doing, and yeah, keep up the fight, brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
what we can do is try, right?
All we can do is show up, right? Purpose, passion, intention. Just keep it going. So Jack, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks everybody at the Elephant and Castle community. Don't forget to join me on Thursday at 11 a.m. for another Tough Through Tender gathering. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you later. Bye.